Hey everyone, John from Nintendo Life here, and the Switch is kinda like Poochie from Itchy and Scratchy, in that when it's not around, people go, "Where's the Switch?" And in the first 3 years of its life, this old thing, the 3DS, had the audacity to still exist. And a bunch of great games came out on this system, but people just didn't want to try them. They were too busy with their fancy new Switch. So we're talking about 3DS games that released in 2017 and beyond, which doesn't include Rhythm Paradise Megamix, but I just want to talk about this game. Let me talk about this game! Okay, let's do a time frame. It's 2017, it's January 12th, we've just seen a bunch of Switch games for the very first time. Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, we are buzzing for this new hardware. And then, 8 days later, Dragon Quest VIII falls onto 3DS. People are saying, why isn't this on Switch? Put this on Switch, Square. And by all means, Square, put it on Switch. But I'm going to tell you right now that this game is absolutely worth playing on 3DS. I let the original release pass me by, and I'm kind of glad that I did. Compared to PS2, the 3DS version has faster battles. Outside of sailing, there's no random encounters. There's new party members, there's a photo mode. There are some concessions, like the game does look worse and there is a MIDI soundtrack this time around, but Dragon Quest VIII has never played better. This was one of the biggest RPGs to brace the system. If you enjoyed Dragon Quest XI, then this game basically does the same thing, but almost 15 years earlier. It was wildly ahead of its time as a handheld game, and even as a console game, there's very little like it. High-budget RPGs very rarely try to be traditional, and that's where Dragon Quest has everything cornered. This is everything you love about turn-based RPGs, but more accessible, more streamlined, and just ultra cozy. Plus, Munchie! There's even sections where you play as Munchie. God, this is the game of the year. I don't care what year it is. Despite all my excitement for the Switch at the time, I still gave this one a go, not really being a Dragon Quest fan. And this changed things. Dragon Quest VIII very quickly became one of my favourite RPGs ever made and got me into the series. This is a brilliant starting point for Dragon Quest, the definitive version of VIII, and just one of the best games on 3DS. Don't sleep on this one. It's timeline time again! In 2007, Metroid Prime 3 closes off the Prime trilogy, but there's a tease. 14 years later, that thing is kind of coming. Since then we had Other M, and... Federation Force! That's not the game I'm talking about. Federation Force came at a really bad time. Metroid Prime was on a cliffhanger, the series had gone 6 years without a game, and then in came this spin-off multiplayer shooter. And it just kind of reiterated the cliffhanger and didn't build upon anything, so yeah, things weren't looking good. But the following year, Samus finally returned in Samus Returns. The first game had already been remade and it was the best game in the series, I'm sorry it's true, I'm not taking it back, and Metroid 2 very much needed it as well. The original game, while it still has its charm, is very dated, so while Samus Returns borrowed the core identity, it had the opportunity to do its own thing. It's still about hunting Metroids, but basically everything in between is entirely new. This is very much a brand new 2D Metroid, and a lot of people slept on it. I can't blame anyone. The Switch was half a year old at this point and we just kinda wanted to stay on our brand new shiny HD system. But there is a really good new Metroid just sitting there waiting to be played. I really like the combat in this one too. The design can get a bit excessive with the counter, but the new Aeon abilities make you feel so powerful. The game can be a bit linear at times, and Metroid fights do get repetitive, but this game gets so much right, and it was absolutely overshadowed. Okay, so today I can't talk about Rhythm Paradise Megamix, but I can talk about Warioware Gold, which I genuinely think is one of the very best games on the entire system. Nintendo was kinda going through a phase at the time of just compiling components of previous iterations and just making one big entry. We had Rhythm Paradise Megamix, Mario Party the Top 100, and of course, Warioware Gold. There's some new stuff in there, but I think the best thing is bringing together all these games across different platforms, across different control schemes, and just uniting them. There's games where you just use the D-pad and the A button. There's games where you twist. There's games where you touch. There's games where you blow. It does just about anything it can on the 3DS, and for a Nintendo game, this is a brilliant swan song for the system. It's also really weird when Charles Martinet speaks full sentences, and this game is full of that. I'm here for it though. This is everything great about the series, just packed in together and enhanced. Even Gamer from Game & Wario's in here. And here's the best part, you can dub your own cutscenes.
In just a few hours, we could be holding real-life ninja learner's permits!
I can't wait to subscribe to Nintendo Life!
I'm definitely not the Fire Emblem guy in Nintendo life, but I did finish this one. And not only did I finish it, but I enjoyed it. Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia is a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden, which is a game that we never got in the West. It's a really personal and quite small story compared to other games in the series, and I think that's what I really like. Alm and Celica were childhood sweethearts, but over time, they were divided. Fast forward years and years later, and there's two different campaigns, one starring Alm and the other Celica. You can go back and forth between them whenever you want, but basically you're going further and further and slowly uniting the two. It's simple and it's elegant, and for the very first time in the series, it's fully voice acted, essentially every single line. Now, the battles themselves aren't as in-depth as some modern titles, but the surrounding elements really build things up. It's not just battle after battle, there's towns you can explore, and fully 3D dungeons. I'm by no means an expert on this series, but this is my favourite one. So here's a double bill, Persona Q2 and Etrian Odyssey Nexus. Q2 came to Japan in 2018 but was localized in 2019, and so was Etrian Odyssey. These were both 2019 games. These were both made by the same development team and follow a very similar gameplay style. Persona Q2 is a bit of a special one. Much like its predecessor, it unites the world of previous Persona games. So characters from Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5 are in this game and all playable. If you're a fan of any of these games, then this is definitely worth a try. The game plays very differently to Persona, but the character interactions, they are so fun. And kinda like Warioware Gold, these games are great on 3DS. The bottom screen being a map is so intuitive for a dungeon crawler. In fact, Etrian Odyssey has never not been on a dual screen device. I'm sure they can make it work, but it's right at home here. So if you're a fan of Persona 3, Persona 4, or Persona 5, this is definitely worth a go. And if you enjoy it, there's a lot more in Etrian Odyssey. When you Google Detective Pikachu, it takes a while until you find something relating to the actual game Detective Pikachu. You might have even forgotten this was a game. The first episode of Detective Pikachu came to Japan in 2016, and it was fully localized and completed in 2018. Also came with this big-ass amiibo. I love this thing. So this was kind of overshadowed by two things. One, the Switch, and also the upcoming movie. But this is still a really fun and interesting adventure. Unlike most Pokemon games, and even spin-offs, this reaches far away from Pokemon battles. In Rhyme City, humans and Pokemon coexist together, and it's really interesting seeing those relationships. And Detective Pikachu himself is still hilarious, he's still a coffee lover, and he still weirdly flirts with women, which, I mean, there's something wrong there. Now, Detective Pikachu was actually announced for Switch, but it's been a long time and we don't really know what exactly this game's gonna be. Whether it's a port or a sequel, it's not really been communicated. But no matter what it is, this gameplay style and world is so fun, and I can't wait for it to live again on the Switch. Again, look how big it is. Not only am I not the Fire Emblem guy, but I'm also not the Monster Hunter guy, yet I also finished this one. Monster Hunter Stories is an adorable RPG. The look is just so cozy and inviting, and this world is so fun to just be around. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the combat system isn't my favourite, and it's basically rock, paper, scissors. That said, it wasn't enough to put me off because the rest of the game held up so well. I didn't have much affinity for the monsters in the series, but they still hooked me. Every design works so well for an RPG. There's plenty of elements straight from the main series, but the personality is something all its own. And for that reason, I am one of 5 people more excited for Stories 2 than Monster Hunter Rise. Sorry Alex, but it looks so good. So if you're someone like me who struggled to get into the core series, then this might be the game for you. There's for sure some great fan service in there, but the game itself, that's what keeps you hooked. You may know Grezzo as the fellows who make the Zelda remasters. They did Ocarina 3D, Four Swords Anniversary, Majora's Mask 3D, and recently, Link's Awakening. But in Grezzo are people who worked on Secret of Mana. There's some talent in there, but they very rarely get to show it. But in 2017, Nintendo finally published a non-Zelda game from them, and it didn't sell well at all, and they're probably stuck in the Zelda dungeon forever now. Ever Oasis is partly a town-building game, but also a dungeon crawler. It's so fulfilling to see your town going from being nothing at all to being this bustling oasis. What's more is, the bigger it gets, the better your dungeon crawling is too. It's a really satisfying back and forth that makes everything feel important. It released on 3DS just 3 months after the Switch came out, while ARMS was the new hotness. What a time that was. But it doesn't matter how many people played it, regardless of that, the game is still a lot of fun and it's super charming. Oh, Alpha Dream, you weren't given a good hand. Over a year ago, the studio went bankrupt, and that may be because their final 2 Mario and Luigi games were remakes that came out long after the Switch. Superstar Saga was the same year, but Bowser's Inside Story was almost 3 years later. They're perfectly fine remakes and certainly make the originals look cleaner, but I always felt the original Mario & Luigi game had a very distinctive style that's just completely lost here. Maybe it's just me, but the energy of the original feels a bit sterile this time around. Still though, it's a great game, and it came with Bowser's minions as well. I also don't think too highly of this mode, but it did give us a brand new side story, one that's actually pretty interesting. And the Bowser's Inside Story remake was pretty good too. I feel like this art style loses less compared to the original, and it came with Bowser Jr.'s journey. It was a bit of a weird decision to remake this one, given you can still play the DS original on the 3DS, but either way, it's here and it's worth playing. Now here's a weird one, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. This came to 3DS the same time as the Switch version, and a lot of people don't seem to know that this exists. It's perfectly fine. If anything, it's more than fine. There's surprisingly nothing wrong with this port, and it still looks really good on 3DS. And I actually really like Low Poly Toad, he's so cute. Even the Odyssey levels are in this version. It's bizarre that this exists, but I love demakes like this. Like the Wii U and Switch versions are beautiful, and they shouldn't run on the 3DS, but here they are! They even have stereoscopic 3D too, and seeing these dioramas in full 3D space kinda makes it feel like they were made for this handheld in the first place, even though they weren't. Fire Emblem Warriors was also on 3DS, and it's very easy with that one to say, like, this is the lesser version. But with Captain Toad, it's fully playable, it's perfectly fine, and it's just fascinating. This one's fascinating too, but more in that they decided to make it rather than, the game itself. I will continue to push low poly Captain Toad. Everyone must love him. So, are there any late 3DS games that you really like Rhythm Paradise Megamix? Everyone should play it. Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to go to that subscribe button and say, why aren't you on the Switch? And we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.